Thank you all for coming. My name is Sarah McCann. I'm president of the League of Women Voters of Appleton. And 2014 is our 75th anniversary of the Appleton League of Women Voters, working in our community with study, education, advocacy, and candidate forums. Please note that there are two events that we are still in charge of. On Wednesday, October 22nd, we're holding a public education forum here at the Appleton Public Library at 6:30. And then on Thursday, October 23rd at 6:30, there will be a candidate forum for District 19 at UW Fox Valley Perry Hall. So we hope you'll join us for those also. Thank you for your interest in this forum and your support of the voting process. We also thank the candidates Amanda Stuff and Chris Klein for entering the State Assembly District 57 race. They're willing to run for office and serve their community, and for citizens like us, we are grateful for your jump into the race. The League of Women Voters of Appleton is nonpartisan, and as an organization, it does not support or oppose candidates for public office, but acts only on those issues chosen by the membership for study and action. The League believes that participation of informed citizens is beneficial to the system. The League encourages its members as individuals to be active in finding and supporting candidates for public office and in seeking election to the public offices. Tonight, we hope to have some of our questions answered. The League has a few questions, and we invite you, the audience, to write questions you have on note cards and pass them to the attendant who will be collecting them. There are League members who will peruse the questions before they're sent forward. And this is not to eliminate any question, but rather to group them into like categories so we have an opportunity to ask as many questions as possible, covering a variety of issues. We have a timekeeper. The League has always found this process to be a good means to keep us on track, moving along. And it's not meant to cut people off or diminish the importance of a response, but simply to use our time wisely. Jacqueline Klimachowski is Director of Voter Services for the League of Women Voters of Appleton, and she has planned and organized this forum with her committee. And she will be presenting the questions to the candidates. So before we start, let's stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we get too much further, do we need to do anything with the lighting? Is it like right in your eyes?
I think it's all right. Is it in your eyes over there?
Okay. Yeah. Let me add my gratitude to the candidates for your time this evening to share your viewpoints with our voters, and thanks to the audience for caring enough to be informed when you cast your votes in the election on Tuesday, November 4th. I have the pleasure to moderate this forum tonight. I have some prepared questions, as Sarah described, some from the League and some submitted from interested citizens ahead of time. After 3 of these prepared questions, we will move to questions from the audience. I already have some. And then I hope to have time for a few more prepared questions. For each question, each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond, and we will have that monitored by our timekeeper, who is Stephanie, and she's right there in the front, so everyone can see her. And she'll however much time is left, she'll let you know when to stop. And I'm going to alternate the candidate responses so that they can reply to the questions, have a chance to be first and a chance to be last. But I would like to, before we begin, ask that you make sure all your cell phones are off, any other media that you might have, and that you hold any and all applause until the very end when we say a thank you to both of our candidates. So, let me start off with, since both of you are new to this position, to the 57th State Assembly, so we'll have 2 minutes to introduce yourselves to us. And Amanda, you can begin.
Can everybody hear me okay? All right. Well, I am Amanda Stuck, and I first of all like to start off by thanking the league for holding this event and giving us the opportunity to have these very important conversations about the issues facing our state. I was born and raised in Appleton here. I'm a product of our public schools in Appleton. Graduated from UW Oshkosh with both a bachelor's degree in political science and a master's degree in public administration. I actually put myself through college working 2 jobs, both as a rural mail carrier and serving in AmeriCorps, where I served at the Red Cross and Habitat for Humanity. As part of my service there, I actually helped to open up the Restore here in Appleton. I went on to work for Congressman Steve Kagan in his congressional office, where I worked on a variety of casework areas, including small business issues, Medicaid issues, environmental issues. Really learned a lot about the issues facing our community and what elected officials can do about those issues in that role. I now work for the Appleton Housing Authority, where I work with low-income families on a rental assistance program. And my husband and I are raising 4 children that are now in our public schools here in Appleton. My husband's a sheet metal journeyman, and one of the reasons why I'm running is because we know as a family what it really means when we talk about Wisconsin being dead last in jobs in the Midwest. My husband's really had to travel outside the state to keep working these past few years, and so that, in addition to worrying about the future of our education system here in Wisconsin, having 4 kids in the public schools, caused me to decide to run for the seat and be a voice for families like ours down in Madison. Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you. Thank you to the league, and thanks for everybody for coming here tonight. I'm Chris Klein. I'm running for the 57th. I currently own a real estate and insurance business. I was an alderman in the city of Menasha. I was a 2-term chairman of the Menasha Administration Committee, 2-term member of the Menasha Fire and Rescue and Joint Personnel and Finance Committee. I was the chairman of the Board of Review in the city of Menasha. I was also on the Park and Rec Board in the city of Menasha, and I was also on an ad hoc committee where we did a capital facilities planning for the city of Menasha. I'm running for state assembly because I want to make Wisconsin one of the best places to live, work, and retire. I want to make sure that it's affordable to live here. Over the last 6 months, I've knocked on thousands of doors and talked to thousands of people, and overwhelmingly, their input to me was they want to see this state grow with their jobs, they want a growing economy, and they want to see us controlling spending. And as a leader and a lawmaker, I'll make responsible increases in funding in our most vital programs, including education and healthcare. I also want to bring a collaborative voice and spirit to Madison and be an independent voice for all the residents of the 57th district.
Okay, so we'll start the questioning off. As I said, the first 3 are lead questions, and when we're talking about the lead, you can probably predict this one. So, Chris, what should be done to ensure that every citizen has the ability to vote and have their vote counted without undue barriers?
I don't know what barriers we would have in the state right now. I think that for all citizens in Wisconsin, I think our right to vote is one of our most precious rights as citizens. And I think that I don't see any barriers to voting at this point, and we'll continue that in Wisconsin and in the nation.
think we need to do everything possible to make sure everybody can vote. It is a fundamental right for everybody. So we need to look at doing as much early voting, have as many hours as possible for people to vote, people who have shift work. We need to have alternative voting sites for people who have transportation barriers. So we really need to look at everything we can do to make sure everybody can vote. And also I think part of that is just being, as a legislator, open and available to hear from people about what their barriers are and what we can do to address those.
Okay, and do you support the minimum wage referendum question that asks voters if the state shall raise the minimum wage?
Yes, I think we absolutely need to raise the minimum wage. There is no reason why somebody who's working 40 hours a week, 52 weeks a year should live in poverty. Actually, I was doing an inspection for one of my clients in Housing Authority and talking to a landlord who owns an older apartment building. It's nothing fancy. He said he's been a landlord for a really long time, and he's never seen it this bad where people can be working, 2 people working full-time at minimum wage, and they still can't afford rent and food and the things they need to live. So I think we absolutely need to raise the minimum wage.
Well, the minimum wage was always that, I think all of us in this room at one point have been at a minimum wage or at minimum wage at some point in their life. And I think as we work through that learning process and work experience, we work ourselves up out of certain economic situations. What I'd like to see is us create an environment in the state where we're creating jobs where the wages are better, and we're not creating more minimum wage jobs. And right now we have a 5.5% unemployment in Wisconsin. So employers are already finding it difficult to find workers, and they're already increasing their wages in order to attract more workers. And I think what we would do as legislators, and I would do, is support legislation where we're creating better paying jobs and supporting wage growth in that way.
And this starts with Chris. Do you support the Badger Care referendum question on the ballot that asks voters whether or not we should accept the federal funds for Badger Care?
Well, I think that there's certainly some funding issues with Medicaid, and the Affordable Care Act has been there's some difficulty with the rollout of that. The part of ACA has been cut in. Part of the requirement was to cut Medicare and Medicaid, and Medicare has been somewhat restored, but Medicaid is still not being funded at the level that it should be. I think what we've done in the state of Wisconsin was responsible in the long term. It wasn't a short-term fix. We have some issues where the federal government has promised funding for long term, but if that funding doesn't materialize, part of the strings attached is that we move more people into Medicaid, and when that funding runs out, how do we pay for that as taxpayers in Wisconsin? Because in 2 years we're going to get another president, maybe a different administration. There's no guarantee that the money's going to be there. Part of ACA is that to cut $1.8 billion out of the funding for Medicaid and for reimbursement to doctors, for reimbursement to hospitals between 2014 and 2020. So we're already looking at some funding restrictions coming up. I think what we've done was reasonable for what we've done now. Could we have some changes in it? Sure, I think there could be some changes to it. But right now, I think in the short term, what we've done has been responsible. And moving forward, we'll see what changes we can make from there.
Well, I absolutely think we should take those Badger Care dollars. Unfortunately, I have to disagree. I don't think it was a responsible decision that what we did. We had to actually pay more now to cover less people. Those are our tax dollars that should come back here to help us cover people with insurance. I think the responsible thing to do would be to take that money. We do take other federal funds that aren't always guaranteed in the future, so I think it's a little unfair to pick and choose which ones we're going to say we're going to take based on that alone. Also, I think that showing that it's going to cost us more in the long run, I think was like 206 million. That's going to cost us more than if we had taken that money in the biennium. So I do think we absolutely should have taken that money, and we should still do it.
We have a few more economic questions here, so starting with Amanda. According to a recent Post-Crescent report, there is a disconnect between available jobs and skilled workers to fill them. What would you do to alleviate this problem while serving in the state assembly?
Well, education is the #1 investment we can make in our economy. We need to invest K through 12 all the way through our university systems. We need to make sure our elementary or K through 12s are fully funded so our students are prepared when they graduate from that system to either then go through our technical schools, which need to be, again, funded fully and funded well so that they're able to respond to the needs of employers in the area. So investing in our school system, making sure we have the training available in our tech schools that employers are looking for. We need to make sure we have all of that fully funded, and that's one of the best things we can do to make sure we have people prepared for those jobs.
You know, we hear a lot about there not being a lot of bipartisan support for things in Madison. This is one I think that all of us agree that we are going to see a workforce shortage in the state of Wisconsin, and making sure that we have a well-educated workforce is going to be vital for the economic success of the state. And I agree with Amanda on this, that we do need to continue to support our public schools. We need to put a curriculum in place that supports what business and industry is going to be looking for in the future. Because ultimately, that's where these kids are going to end up. They're either going to end up going to a college or university or tech school or into the workforce right after high school. And meeting with businesses recently, I'm hearing the same thing and seeing help wanted signs, seeing now hiring signs all over the place. And they're having a difficult time finding workers, especially skilled workers. And we need to have a curriculum in place that supports what the reality of moving out into the workforce is going to mean for these kids. And I think that's something that we're going to see some bipartisan support on moving forward in the next budget.
Okay, Chris, will you support allowing counties to once again do road work, share equipment among the counties?
You know, this was one where there was some, the governor had wanted to protect some of the road working business, but I know that from a municipal standpoint, we do a lot of work as a municipality on our own roads, and oftentimes we do it less expensive than a private contractor. And I think that if the counties can do the work and they can do it less expensive, I would support that. They can put it out for a bid and it's less expensive to do that. And I think that's an approach we need to take. But we need to have, I support local control. And if that means local control at the county level, local control at the municipal level, I believe that we're better suited as taxpayers to affect change if that's necessary at the local level.
I mean, this is, an issue I probably could use a little bit more information on it. We'd like to hear from both sides a little bit more, but I do think it makes sense if local municipalities can do it cheaper, that we should be looking at doing it that way. But I think overall, it's something I don't hear necessarily a lot about when I'm at the doors, so it's something that we should look at and consider.
That's true. Nobody talks.
Yeah.
Amanda, would you support state legislation enabling the creation of a regional transit authority?
Yes, absolutely. I was actually just at a transportation conference recently and hearing from a lot of people who are handling these issues. We're really facing a crisis if we don't address this issue. And a regional transit authority would really be a way to make sure we still have good transportation systems, that people can get to work and school, and it's really just vital to our economy that we have good transportation, and this is one way to address that issue.
There's a couple of issues with an RTA that first it's the referendum that is part of the conversation. I support referendums as one of the purest forms of democracy. Put it to the people, let them decide. The other part of the RTA is there's some federal regulations on this, and we haven't heard yet about the funding. on this quite yet, whether they're going to fund this fully as they have in the past. And the last part of it is creating a board that's going to have taxing authority, and they're not going to be elected. That's part of this puzzle that I have a little bit of a problem with. And so I still have some questions on that, how this board is going to be put together. But overall, I think RTA having a functioning public transit for the most needy is vital to our growing economy.
Okay. Chris, we had been at the Supreme Court here for a number of times, and so this one deals with the concept of traditional marriage. Could you just talk about that?
Well, this isn't really, again, this is a personal issue at this point, because we're not going to deal with this at the legislative level anymore. It's been decided by the Supreme Court, and you know, it's never been an issue with me or my family, so it's really not much we as far as I know, as far as the legislation, we don't really have anything to talk about.
Sure, I'm happy with the decision that came down recently. I fully support everybody's right to marry who they love. And I don't think that we should stand that they don't have that right. Everybody should have equal rights and decide who they want to marry for themselves.
Amanda, what do you feel is the greatest threat to our environment, and how should we deal with it here in Wisconsin?
Well, the biggest threat really is when it comes down to the economy and the fight over who can make money off the environment, because unfortunately it's not always so much money in saving the environment. Though I think in the long run, our economy will be stronger if we protect our environment, because we have tourism dollars, we have other funds that come in for protecting our natural resources. There have been a lot of things, with mining bills that have come up, where it's really about money, and if we have more money, it can be a threat to the environment. So we need to make sure we do what we can to bring jobs here, but in a way that protects our environment, that hopefully invests in green energy to grow our economy, versus old ways that will only hurt our environment in the long run and our economy.
I know that right now, it may be part of the next legislative session is a phosphorus issue with Wisconsin and runoff. It's one that I've been in some roundtable discussions on, and it has to do with agricultural runoff, and that's probably the biggest one that we're not controlling right now as a state. Municipalities have a lot of rules and regulations with runoff, and so do counties. And a lot of unfunded mandates come down from the state to the municipal level for phosphorus runoff, for groundwater, surface water runoff. And but the one that hasn't been addressed yet is agricultural runoff, and manure and other pesticides that are used that are, as many you see in Lincoln with Aggle, that the algae blooms that's I think going to be something that's going to come up in these legislative sessions. So that you want in our environment, I think, would be a bigger issue than anything else right now.
Chris, how has your specific job that you've had prepared you for serving in the legislature?
Well, I've been a business owner for 20 years, and I've had a manufacturing company. I sold that. I now have a real estate and insurance business. I've been through the struggles that everybody's been through, and I know the community that I live in, that being an alderman, being involved in my community for so many years, helps me know what people need, what their needs are. Menasha is a very poor community, and both with their school district, with just in their community in general. And this part of Appleton, the south part of Appleton, the socioeconomic is very similar. And being involved in the community for so many years and doing so much, I think has helped me understand what the needs are and how to communicate with people and how to be involved with people and be accessible to people so they can come to you if they have a problem or a question. And I think those are the biggest things that have helped me prepare for this, to get to this point.
Well, I would say in my current position as Housing Authority, where I work with low-income families, I really have gotten a chance to learn what are the barriers to families becoming self-sufficient. What are the lack of resources or, any barriers that they may face to pull themselves out of poverty and become self-sufficient and be able to give back to the community. Also, when I worked for Congressman Kagan, when I worked with small businesses, I learned about what are the challenges for small businesses that keep them from being able to grow in our economy. I put on resource fairs to connect them with SBA programs, SCORE. So I learned about the needs of business community through that. The variety of jobs that I've had give me a lot of different background in different areas that together give me a good background to bring to the State Assembly.
Amanda, what, if any, changes would you make in the state pension funds?
Well, I think we have one of the best systems around. It's been in the news a few times recently that we have a really great system. So, I think that something's great. We don't want to mess with it too much and keep it really just the way it is and keep it the strong system that it is.
Well, Wisconsin State Pension Fund is the only fully funded pension in the United States. So I kind of have to agree with Amanda. Don't mess with something that's working. It's a fantastic system, and I couldn't add much more than that.
Chris, what ideas do you have to improve citizen involvement in government?
Well, first of all, this is one thing. I talked to so many people, and I got 3 phone calls today, and people were amazed that I answered my phone. And that's the first thing they're shocked at, is that they actually can get a hold of somebody. And the experiences that I've had, being a representative in my community, is that people need to find you. They need to know where you are. They need to be able to call you. You need to be accessible. And I think that's the biggest thing that I hear from people is what they're frustrated with is that when people get elected to certain offices, they disappear. And one thing that I pledged to everybody since I've been involved is that you can find me anywhere. You know where I live. Come to my house. You can call me. You just called me now. You're going to have the same phone number as I'm a representative as I do now. So you'll be able to get a hold of me. Because that's our job, is to represent you and to be accessible to you and to answer to you. And sometimes that gets lost. And that's what I think is the biggest thing that I'm taking away from this campaign.
Well, I think definitely being out in the community, being accessible is very important so that people know who you are and they feel that they have a reason to be involved. But I also think it comes down to certain things like nonpartisan redistricting, which would cause representatives to have to be available. As I said, I think it would kind of stop I don't have to be around anymore because now if there's actual competitive elections, I have to be available to you. So I think there are certain things we need to look at doing to make people want to be more involved.
Okay, this is a little bit of an introduction, and then there's going to be 2 questions. So we'll start with the first question with Amanda, and then the second part with Chris. In the last biennial budget, the private school voucher program was expanded statewide, and a new tax deduction for private school tuition was included. Because the provisions were added in the last hours, no public hearings were made on these proposals. So the first part of the question is, do you support private school vouchers and the tax deductions for private school tuition?
No, I don't support vouchers, and I actually brought this along with me today, which is the Post-Crescent from the other day that shows that failed voucher schools got $139 million from the state. And this is a perfect example of why I don't support the voucher schools. We can't take public money out of our already underfunded public schools to give them to unaccountable voucher schools that a lot of them in the article said were only here maybe 5 years or less than a year. And to me, it just shows that that doesn't work. And to take that tax deduction when we're already facing quite a big structural deficit in the next budget just doesn't seem very responsible use of taxpayer dollars to me. A lot of those families were already sending their kids to voucher schools anyway, so they already could afford it without that tax deduction. So to me, again, it just doesn't seem a very responsible use of our tax funds, and if we really want to invest in our children's education, we need to make sure we keep that money in the public schools.
Well, that's absolutely correct. There are some failing voucher schools, and they shouldn't have been in business. But there's also failing public schools, and parents should have a choice, and to have their kids get out of those underperforming schools into schools that they can succeed in. There are stories of great success with voucher schools. St. Mark's Academy in Milwaukee is one. They're predominantly inner city school where they're high achieving. Up until 8th grade, they're trying to expand into high school. And that's a voucher school. Very strict, very regimental, and these kids are performing. So there are success stories out there. But we should also, there should be certainly, this voucher school should also be under the same rules and regulations that public schools, and they should be monitored in the same way. I believe in choice. My dad was involved in the 220 program in Brown Deer, which was one of the first choice busing programs from out of Milwaukee into the suburbs. And there was countless success stories for kids getting out of the inner city, out to the suburbs. I think states are a great place to innovate with public education, and I think this may be an opportunity. I still have questions on funding on this, so more questions about if this is feasible or not.
And the follow-up question to that was, do you approve of major policy changes being inserted into budget bills?
Well, I think, yeah, policy, budgets and policy, I think they're two separate things. I believe that budgets should be budgets, and we should be talking about dollars and cents, and we should be voting on policy separately. And I think there is too much, and it's happened in many different administrations, that our budgets are for managing our budgets. I don't put policy into my household budget. I put policy into my rules and regulations with my kids, and that's a separate issue. So that's how I would do that.
Yeah, I agree. Ideally, that policy would be separate from the budget, and that anything policy-wise like this would definitely get a hearing. I think that's definitely important, that citizens get input on any policy that we're passing, and that we do have time to have good hearings about it, get good information on anything we're voting on.
Amanda, what ideas do you have to improve the quality of life for citizens in the district and the state?
Well, it comes down to a lot of the big issues we've been talking about, making sure people have access to good education, so they can get good living wage jobs, that we have good transportation systems so they can enjoy the community, that they can get to work in school. All of those things are what build vibrant communities. Also building communities where everybody feels welcome and everybody feels respected. Those are really important things to making sure we have good communities.
We talk about this at the municipal level quite often, and we make choices. And what's the quality of life? Keeping a swimming pool in your municipality, having a certain amount of parks in your municipality. You know, we're seeing in the 57th district a lot of redevelopment, and these are going to go a long way to creating a better quality of life for the citizens and the taxpayers. We have in Menasha, we have the Gilbert paper site for the hotel. You may have been reading about the Menasha Hotel redevelopment. 441 and Highway 10, that's going to spur more economic development and growth. Along the river in Appleton, all of the different redevelopment projects that are going on, all these shuttered paper mills that are now becoming revitalized in river walks and libraries and convention centers. These are all part of the things that we choose as taxpayers, that if we want them to make our quality of life better. And I think in Wisconsin, in the Fox Valley, we have one of the finest quality of life environments that you can find anywhere. As a matter of fact, I had a talk with a lady that had her on her door one day. She had just moved here from Pennsylvania, and she said she's astounded by how quickly you can get places, how safe it is here, how good the schools are, no matter what schools you have, you're going to or reading about. We have one of the best places in the state for sure to live. And I think it has to do with the people and our lawmakers and leaders, and I intend to continue that.
Okay, Chris, Menasha and Appleton will have a referendum to amend the U.S. Constitution to limit campaign spending by corporations. Do you support the initiative, and what type of campaign reform would you support for Wisconsin?
Well, we've tried, how many times have we tried campaign reform and trying to get money out of politics? You know, the McCain-Feingold bill, and there's just numerous, it never works. We have more money in politics than ever before, and the Supreme Court just allowed unlimited, contributions. So I don't support that. I don't think it's feasible to even have that happen. I don't know how you're going to keep money out of politics. I don't know what other referendum or other laws or rules are going to be enacted to do that. People with money who want to influence politicians are going to find a way to get that money to those politicians. It's unfortunate, but it's the way it is, and I don't think this referendum is going to matter.
Well, I definitely support campaign finance reform. It's a huge issue. When we talked before about how do you get people involved again, I think this is another issue of why people aren't involved. Because of the money that's in there right now, people feel like they really don't matter, that it is only about the money. And so this is huge in terms of just what is right and also getting people involved. As far as any specific plan, I guess I can't say I have one in particular that I would support, but I think we need to look at doing it. Just because it's hard, it doesn't mean we need, we don't try and we don't try and do it. We have to try and find something that will work so that we get the money out of politics and it can really be about what's best for the community.
Okay, Amanda, would you support any reforms to union membership such as right to work?
No, I would not support right to work. It is incredibly important that all people have the right to bargain for all aspects of their job. It isn't about one side or the other having more power. It's about truly sitting down and bargaining, which is what unions are for, to protect workers in terms of fair wages, working conditions. The states that have right to work actually tend to have lower wages overall. They have lower outcomes on many health studies. So right to work really is not the right way to go. We need to protect collective bargaining.
I agree. I don't support changing the state to a right to work state. I was endorsed by the Northeast Wisconsin construction and building trades unions because I don't support that. And I've been involved with the building trades over the years, and I've seen the difference between non-union and union employees and workers. The steam fitters, the pipe fitters, the sheet metal workers, the electricians, the plumbers, they're very proud of what they do, and so am I. And I would not support legislation to make Wisconsin a right to work state. And so, yeah, it's pretty simple, pretty clear in my opinion.
Okay, to follow up on that, other than minimum wage, what can the state do to improve wages for employees? You just finished, so you're...
Oh, me?
Yeah.
Okay. I think building our economy, and I said that before when we were talking about minimum wage. I think we need to create an economy in Wisconsin where we're creating family supporting wage jobs. We hear so much about that, but that's true. And not creating more minimum wage jobs, but creating an environment where businesses are expanding and growing, where they're offering better wages because they're expanding and growing. And those who are in a minimum wage situation, they have an opportunity to move up for their further training, a better job, and I think creating an economic environment where more people can move out of certain economic situations is what's necessary.
I think, again, it comes down to investing in education so that people can get the training they need for higher wage jobs, growing our economy overall, making sure we're investing in our transportation and our education system so that we are bringing jobs here long term is really important. I think also making sure we have a good environment for entrepreneurs that want to start the businesses of the future and sustainable jobs of the future will help make sure that we're bringing those higher, more living wage jobs here.
Amanda, we've all been bombarded with ads on TV for campaign, and apparently there's discussion about abortion and some recent legislation that was proposed. Can you respond to that?
Well, I fully support a woman's right to choose. Her decision should be between her and her doctor. Nobody else should be making decisions like that. Definitely don't think the state should be deciding what kind of procedure she needs to have. That would be something, again, a doctor and woman should be deciding. I think women definitely are smart enough to make their own decisions about their health. And when we talk about growing the economy, making sure women are empowered to have control over when they have children and being able to plan their parenting is one of those things that is important for the economic well-being of women.
There is a right, federal law that allows for abortions. Roe versus Wade, was passed in the 70s. When we get to conversations about this, my discussion usually is about prevention, and we have that opportunity in Wisconsin, especially for underage kids, to gain access to contraception without parental acknowledge or parental knowledge. I was raised Catholic. I have my traditions and my faith teach me that all life is precious. There's some economic realities though, but it's one of those conflicting issues that I still struggle with, and still have a lot of discussion with my priest and my family.
So following up on that, Chris, can you explain why you do or do not believe reproductive health services should be available through all health benefit packages?
Well, I think that the Supreme Court decided on that if you have religious beliefs, that you should have a right to choose what your religion allows you or doesn't allow you to do, especially if you're a private business. I think that's something that I believe that the private sector can choose. I think the federal government should demand that those types of services be required. The reproductive services that are offered are currently being offered. They're just certain specific ones that haven't been allowed, that our businesses haven't offered. But for the most part, there's access to pretty much whatever they need.
I mean, I would have to say that I think it should be offered in every plan, and that definitely employers should be able to decide what's happening in your doctor's office with you. And so I do think employers should have that choice. It should be in any plan.
Okay, Amanda, do you believe public employees also have a right to bargain for more than just salary?
Public employees?
Public employees.
Well, I think any employee should be able to bargain for more than just that. It should be about benefits, it should be about workplace safety. They should be, again, able to bargain for all aspects of their job.
Well, I did support, I wasn't obviously in the legislature, but I did support the Act 10, which was part of that bargaining rights. But we've seen the changes, and we've seen that it wasn't a catastrophe that was what was sold. And even at the municipal level, we saw that the savings that we were able to achieve and use that money for other things in the community as well. And they added more staff. We were able to fund other projects, and it was several $100,000. So it was helpful, and it was difficult. And but we took a state that had a $3 billion deficit into a surplus. So I think it was necessary, but it was difficult, and it still is a little bit of a sticking point for some people. Although the fewer people had talked about it during this campaign than when I was running for Alderman. So I think it's settling in a little bit.
Chris, would you support state or federal legislation to fund greater supervision and training of police officers?
Say that again?
Would you support state legislation to fund greater supervision and training of police officers?
Well, I'm not aware of any lack of training that police officers get. I know that the police officers in the city of Menasha go through a considerable amount of training. Many of our SWAT trained, many of them are dive trained, or open water dive trained. So I think that there's a considerable amount of training available at the municipal level, and I'm sure that the funding is adequate.
Well, this is an interesting question. Again, not one that I've heard about at the doors very much. I'm assuming this might be in response to some of the issues we've heard about recently, like in Ferguson and some of those other areas. I'm assuming that's where this question is coming from. So I guess it's something I would need a little bit more information on in terms of what oversight or training specifically. I mean, I think definitely we do want to hold everybody accountable for doing their job well, but I think for the most part, the men and women who are out there serving really do their job well and try to do their job well. But again, I think everybody does need to be held accountable. We do need to have good oversight in all public positions like that. But as far as what specifically we would change or fund, I guess I would need a little bit more information on that.
And I just want to add something real quick to it, if you don't mind. I know that talking with the officers, at least in Menasha, it is a hard job. Those guys get bombarded every single day with the most vile, nasty stuff sometimes that most of us would just wish we could just crawl under a rock. And they stand up to it and smile, pleasant, and so it's hard. It's really a difficult position that you're in. So.
Okay, Amanda, we're starting this one with you. When you get to the state assembly, what will be your focus in the first month of your term?
Well, I think one of my main focuses would be getting people back to work. So whatever we can do off the bat to start getting jobs back here, start jumpstarting our economy, that would be the #1 priority to focus on for me.
Economic growth, economic development, these are things that, at least in this district, that are going to be important. Representing the people, making sure that they know who they can come to when they have issues, when they have, so they can reach out to the representative. But jobs, growing jobs, making creating a vibrant economy in the state, so that anybody, that we're able to afford funding for so many things that are going to be, we're going to be at a very, very tight budget coming up, and we can continue the tax revenue that we need to fund the things that we hope to do for the next biennium.
Okay, Chris, would you support legislation that would create a state student loan refinancing authority, allowing student loan borrowers to refinance those loans at lower interest rates, just as homeowners do with mortgages?
Well, with a child in college right now, she's working her way through too and paying for a lot of what she is, but I don't know that the state should be involved in banking. I think that we have enough government involvement that I don't know that that's a position that I would like to see the state in. I'd like to see that private sector take over that role. They don't want to do it. It's too risky, and I don't know that we want to be on the hook as a state if all these refinance loans start failing, because the federal student loan program is already deeply in debt, and I don't know that we want to put the state in that position. I do support finding ways to refinance some of these student loans to lower rates, but it should be in the private sector.
Well, I would absolutely support this, and I say that not just as somebody who is repaying student loans myself, but it also would really mean more money in our economy. If people, were able to refinance or pay less in interest, then they would have more money to buy new cars, to make improvements on their homes. So I think this is really important, just in terms of our economy, much less the right thing to do, because why should students get the same rate that you can get as a homeowner?
Amanda, do you support ensuring Wisconsin women have paid sick leave? Why or why?
Absolutely. It's really important. You know, it's really hard when I've actually been a single mother at one time myself, and you are forced between taking care of your kids and making sure they have enough money to feed them. It's an awful situation. So it's good for our economy, again, to make sure people can work and not be afraid that they're going to lose their job because their kid gets sick. And it is good for families all the way around if we have that paid sick leave.
I think that's a job for the private sector as well, and I don't think government should be mandating what businesses do. It's get into a slippery slope when government is really, that deeply involved in business policy. I think as a good policy for most business, we're trying to retain and attract the best employees. They're going to offer benefits that would include certain sick days, sick leave, and paid leaves. So I believe that's a factor in the private sector already.
Given the projected budget deficit that you've mentioned, are tax cuts viable, as many campaigns have said? And if so, what specific tax changes would you propose or support?
Well, the deficit was the headlines that we've all seen, but that was also if there was zero growth in our economy. And but as far as the tax credits, I supported overall reform of our tax code and incorporating some of the things that businesses are getting now for tax credits that I certainly would see as part of a restructuring to eliminate some of those. But I also would like to see us having fewer tax brackets, making it more equitable for individuals and businesses across the board, and bring in line some of the same policies that the federal government has with our state tax code, so they're similar. And because we're seeing with these tax credits and some business credits that we saw in our historical buildings credits that it was going broke. We have to be responsible with our credits. We have to be responsible and make some changes in our tax code. Frankly, I think that would be the number one thing.
Yes. Well, I mean, I sure don't think that every promise about every tax cut would be viable by any means. But I do think when we look at tax cuts, we have to prioritize where we put them. So right now, I think any tax cuts need to go to middle-class families who would actually use that money and put that back out into the economy. Versus the administration, what they've done is, give a tax relief to people making $300,000 or more by 13 times what they've given to middle-class families. So if we are going to do tax cuts, we need to, again, prioritize that they go really to middle-class families. And we need to restore things like the earned income tax credit. That is really important to those middle-class, lower-income families.
Okay. Amanda, in your opinion, what are the most important challenges facing Wisconsin, and how do you propose to address these challenges?
Well, the big thing is the economy, as we've been talking about a lot, because it is a big issue, is making sure people can get back to work, that they can get living wage jobs. It is a really big issue. One of the things that, like I said, it would be my number one priority because it is a big issue. Again, it comes down to investing in education, but it also, I think, has to do with how we work down in Madison. Right now, things have become so bad, it's really hard to do much to address the issue. So I think we need to do a better job of actually reaching out across the aisle, putting some of that partisanship aside, and actually trying to address these issues. So being a voice down there to actually try and reach out to the other side, find out where we can compromise, I think is really important.
Economy is going to be our biggest challenge. Our budget, making sure that we're balancing our budget. Our transportation fund is going to be something that we're going to have to deal with in the next budget as well. K-12 funding, UW colleges, corrections. These are some of our biggest budget items, and they're all going to be challenges because healthcare is going to be probably our biggest expenditure now. because we have to make changes because of ACA. So we got some challenges, and we're going to have to make some very tough decisions. And you know, the four biggies in our budget with UW system, healthcare, corrections, and K-12 funding. So these are the ones we're going to have to focus on and really make some tough decisions with the rest of what we got.
Okay, we'll finish up with this question, and then I'll give you 2 minutes for closing comments. So, Chris, some people run for office because they genuinely want to be of service to constituents. Others run for office because they have a mission to change laws or regulations or taxes. What's your approach?
Wow, yeah, that's true. And I've told people this from the beginning, and I really like this. I really like being service to the people and helping them through issues, especially when they think that even at the municipal level where it's so far away and they don't know what to do, that the person in their neighborhood can help them. And I really enjoy that. I enjoy campaigning. I love being out and knocking on doors and meeting with people and walking the streets, being chased by dogs. And it's truly a joy for me. And being a public servant and being in that environment is truly something that I enjoy. And I'm glad I'm doing this, and I look forward to it.
Well, for me, this is definitely about helping people, helping families like mine and many of yours. As somebody who worked really hard to pull myself out of poverty and become self-sufficient, and now in a middle-class family where my husband and I work really hard to support our family. We work really hard to give back to the community, volunteering on boards and with our kids' sports groups. And we just know that we feel we are underrepresented in Madison, that they aren't really watching out for us and worrying about helping our family get ahead, that it's more about the special interests, more about themselves. So for me, it really is about being a voice down there for families like ours and really stopping the games that are being played down there so we can really focus on the big issues, our economy, our schools, and those things that really matter.
Okay, and you have 2 minutes to summarize anything that you want to conclude with and leave us with.
Well, I again just want to thank everybody for being here in the league, putting this on. Representing District 57 in the Assembly would be a job I would take very seriously, and I would hope that continue seeing all of you if I'm elected so that I can get your input on the issues and hear from you about what we need to do in Madison. I would hope to be a voice down there for civility and for reason so that we can really work together to address the issues that we face.
I like when people can talk without notes. I can't. I have to write everything down. Again, I want to thank everybody who's here, who came tonight. It's nice to see so many faces. And obviously there's some distinct differences between us as candidates. You know, for me as a candidate, I won't divide workers into classes. I want to represent everybody as equals. I want to inspire people. I want to talk to people about the great opportunities we have in this state. And when we all have success, we all benefit. And my message has been pretty clear. Economic growth, a well-educated workforce, creating good-paying jobs to support your family, and tax reforms. I have experience in the leadership and dedication to be your representative. And if I'm fortunate enough to be elected, I'll come back to this district and as a citizen legislator and not a career politician to work and live under the same rules and regulations that I've supported in the legislature, and be a voice for you, because together it's us working together that makes Wisconsin work. I ask for your support on November 4th. Thank you all.
Okay, I have a few comments to close out with. I will be sending, we went through 27 questions, which is I think a record. And I will be sending you an electronic copy of those that I would ask you to do a quick written response via the computer, send it back to me. That will become a voter's guide that will appear on our League of Women Voters of Appleton website so that you can compare their responses to that same set of questions as you go about determining who you're going to be voting for on November 4th. I want to thank you very much to the candidates here for State Assembly District 57 And I also need to thank the members of the league who helped make this forum a success. We have Deb and Stephanie and Sarah, Lois and Penny, and anybody else I might have missed, and Shirley. And a special thanks to the Appleton Public Library for co-sponsoring this event, especially Elizabeth Eisen of Adult Programs. For any of you who need help determining your district or your polling place, we have myvote.wi.gov up on the back, and we can find that information out for you. And if you need absentee ballot requests, we have those forms back there as well. I do have to say that they're the last ones I got off the website. I threw all my old ones away. So these do say you need a voter ID, but you don't need a voter ID when you send it in to request that ballot. And there are some cards back there with helpful websites and those kinds of things. There are some flyers for our next two forums. This one's all about education. Oh. So this will have 7 candidates. 7 of the 10 candidates we invited are going to be attending, which I'm extremely excited about. We should get many different interesting viewpoints on these topics. And it's a little bit different format. It's going to be an hour and a half long instead of our usual hour. And we do have someone, because it's going to be focused on public education. Someone, Jim Bowman, is going to just talk about what the issues are so that we keep our head focused around education, don't wander off into prison reform and other kinds of things. And then on October 23rd, jointly with the Winnebago League, we have the candidate forum for the Senate District 19 with Penny Bernard-Shaver and Roger Roth. So we hope to see you there. Are there any last things that I need to attend to or comment on? Well, thank you all for coming and finding out about our candidates so that you can make a wise decision when you go to the polls. Thank you. Let's give them a hand.